Okay, so I know how much you guys hate properties, and this is why, because you never take the time to just memorize them. You just have to memorize them. That's all there is to it. And there will not be posters up all over the room to remind you on your SOL. So I'm going to go over each property and just a reminder of how we remember it. You can watch these at home and all day, all night. You can keep them on your phone and get them in your head before 2 weeks comes. All right, commutative property. Remember the word commute. We commute from home to school, from work to home, from home to work, your parents do. Okay? So what it is before we were going from home and then we went to school. At the end of the day, we go from school and we want to go to home. So we change the order of things. We don't want to go from home to school all the time because then we'll never leave school. Sometimes we got to change it up and go the opposite way. So what commutative does is just like commuting, instead of A going to B, we now have B going back to A, like we're going back home. So anytime the order of two things change, you are doing the commutative property. If it's multiplication, it's commutative of multiplication. If it's addition, it's commutative of addition. Associative. So remember we talked about who associates with who. Who's in their parentheses together? Who's in their group? Who's dating? So before, we had the boy and the blonde dating. Okay. Then we had the boy and the brunette or black hair girl dating. So what happened was you changed who was dating. You changed who was in those parentheses together. So you will never change the order. A, B, C, A, B, C. The order is a totally different property. All you're looking for with associative is who's associated with who. B and C were associated at first, now A and B. If it's multiplication, it's associative of multiplication. If it's addition, it's associative of addition. Identity. So we like our identity. We like keeping our identity. We don't want people to steal our identity. We like looking at ourselves in the mirror with our identity. Nobody wants to lose their identity. So examples would be A was here. He added 0 to him. But when you add something to you, you don't want to change your identity. So he still kept A, his identity. With addition, it's always adding 0. Because if you add something else, then you change what you get. If you added 5 to 1, then you would get 6. So you don't keep 5. That's not the same identity. For multiplication, you want to stay A. So what multiplies together to get the exact same thing? Only 1. And I keep my identity A. So anytime it stays the same, A is adding to nothing, or A is multiplying by 1 to keep the same thing, you are keeping your identity. Inverse. Inverse means opposite. Inverse means opposite. Inverse means opposite. So negative and positive, those are opposites of each other. Adding, subtracting together are opposites. So anytime you see an A being subtracted or negative or positive or added to each other, and it will always get 0 in the addition case, okay? So opposites, again, -5, +5, those are opposites. For fractions, though, inverse means the opposite way. So if I had A over B, the opposite way would be B over A. And since they cross out, you're just left with 1. So for multiplication, it means the opposite fractions, the opposite way that the fraction would be. And those are all of your properties for right now. Memorize that, listen to that video like 8 times, put it in your head, come up with your own way to think about it so you never forget them ever, ever again.